If you give a wicked mind power, that wicked mind is going to use that power in an inhumane way. So what King was saying is that, yes, reasoning and all this stuff, being smart, all that is fine. But you gotta have some type of character and moral development inside of you also. Otherwise, you're gonna misuse that education. You're gonna misuse that power that you have. Whoa now, whoa now, whoa now. Welcome back to the Black Elf from your boy, Brother Kush. You seen the thumbnail, so you have an idea of what I'm about to talk about. So before I talk about it, I want to put some things officially on the record. One, not that this should matter. I am not a fan of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I respect the man because to me he came across as being sincere, albeit wrong, but sincere. And any man that's sincere, that goes all out and follow what he actually believes in, I can't hate on that, bro. I just can't hate on that. You know what I'm saying? I can't hate on that. But inclusion has a way of changing people as much as exclusion does, or rejection. You want to buy somebody's loyalty, you include them. You want to get somebody's anger, you reject them. But the problem is, a lot of times, the way society, the mainstream, that's what y'all want to be included in, right? Y'all want to be included in the mainstream. But the problem is, a lot of times when society rejects a black person, they become what we call controlled opposition. They seem to oppose them, but they oppose them in a way that's not really opposing them, right? You get what I'm saying? And that's what Dr. Martin Luther King did for most of his career. He was controlled opposition. Now, whether he did that willingly or not, I don't know. But as soon as he woke up and realized that he was going in the wrong direction, they got rid of him. And that's how I see his story, right? That's how I see Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So what I'm about to discuss is something that he said in college before he was co-opted into the system, and before he started before he reached his plateau within the system, because he reached a point where he realized he wasn't going no further, right? That was it. He was where they wanted him, and he wasn't going no higher, and nothing was going to change. He was just being used. And I think he woke up to that, and I think that's why they got rid of him. That's just my personal take on the whole matter, right? But before I continue, let me check my manners, man. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. If you've been here multiple times and have not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, man. Listen, this is going to happen. This is the movement. A one-trick pony can only entertain you with that one trick so many times before you just get tired of seeing it. We are tired of seeing it. I'm connecting with brothers here on YouTube, brothers that have a mind, brothers that think, brothers like Brother Trip, like Brother JJ, like Brother Cole, Brother Brian, Brother Walter, you know what I'm saying? Even sisters like Sister Mo, we are waking up. Well, we already woke. What we are doing now is just connecting to others like ourselves. And we are going to cause a wave, a tidal wave, and we're going to change this stuff. Because that one-trick pony, these educated Negroes in the professional managerial class, their time is up. Their time is up. And I'm going to show you that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., before he was a doctor, before he had his PhD, he called it. He spoke on these very things while he was in college. So anyway, if you've been here and have not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Also, hit that bell icon. If you don't hit the bell icon, YouTube will not let you know when I drop videos. You will have to come check with the channel physically. I am not triggering the algorithm. I'm just not doing it, but it's all good. You know what I'm saying? If you want to contribute to the channel, you want to donate a buck or two, you got Cash App, $ The Black Alpha. You got Venmo at The Black Alpha. You have PayPal at realblackalpha@gmail.com. That's how you support the channel. Let me switch over to a frame and let's get the cooking on this matter. So, What I'm going to talk about is something that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said while he was in college. And I became aware of this article or letter or whatever it was that he wrote. I became aware of it probably about 10, 15 years ago, right? Something like that. And but now I became aware of it after I was aware of the phenomena. You understand what I'm saying? You know what it's like? It's like you go to a car lot, right? And you see a car that you never really seen before, right? It's like, damn, I like that, I haven't seen those on the streets, but I like that. And you get the car, you drive off, you go to the grocery store, you come out, and you got a million of them motherfuckers out there in the parking lot. Now you don't know which car is yours. You hitting up, trying to figure out which one is yours because now you see so many of them. And as you drive down the street, you see more. You go around the corner, you see more. You get on the interstate, you see more. You're like, man, where the hell all these cars come from? That's because before, you just wasn't aware of its existence. And once you became aware of the existence of that car, you see the car everywhere now. The point is, I became aware of this article after I peeked out what the educated class of Negroes was really all about. It's like the universe will show you proof of your enlightenment. If you reach a certain point of understanding, the universe would let you know, okay, now that you can see, I'm going to show you that it was always in your face. It was always there. You just couldn't see it. And that's what stuff is like, right? That's what things are like. So anyway, he wrote this article, and it's funny because a lot of these things I say here on these videos, and I get flack for it. I am highly critical of education. And again, I went to engineering school. I mean, but understand, them people never got my mind. I went to a military engineering school, so that means I was just taught what I needed to know for that job. They wasn't trying to indoctrinate me into a whole bunch of Afro-colonial studies and all this stuff and the transatlantic slave trade. And, I didn't go through none of that, right? I just learned what I needed to learn for engineering, for the purpose of maintaining that job, that position inside the military, before I got kicked out the military. And I'm not against higher learning in no way, shape, or form. The problem is you got to be leery of learning from enemies. You got to be careful when you are letting your worldview be shaped by the educational curriculum that is given to you and mandated and dictated by your enemy. I can't be the only person that understands the inherent flaws in that or the inherent dangers in allowing that to happen. I can't be the only one that see that. This is not about me having an issue with learning. This is not about me having an issue with information or whatever, but I have an issue with indoctrination. That's what I have an issue with. But more importantly, I peeked out long ago by talking to these kind of educated blacks, particularly in the so-called conscious community, the pro-black segments of the inner city. In talking to these people, you realize that a lot of them go to college just because they think it makes them better than black people. And it's clear, it's in their attitude. At least it is while they're going through college and maybe the first few years out of college. But once the real world hit them and they realize they ain't going nowhere, that this stuff ain't gonna make a difference in their life, that nothing is gonna change, then they come back to the hood. But they come back to the hood with still a certain chip on their shoulder based on the white man's approved education that they received. And that's a problem. So basically what they're telling you is that they are better than you because the white man said they are better than you. That's the problem. You always got a segment of us that wants to be in the favor, in the favor of white folks. And they are willing to do anything to be in favor with white folks. Is this the truth? So on this thing, Dr. King actually peeped out this stuff, right? And he spoke on it. And the article was, as you see on the screen, the purpose of education. You see the author right there, Morehouse College, Dr. King, Martin Luther Jr., Morehouse College. Now, I highlighted some points because it's not about the whole thing. I mean, you can read the whole thing. I'll have it in a link down below. Now, this is where it starts. Now, listen good. King said, I too often find that most college men have a misconception of the purpose of education. A misconception of the purpose of education. Most of the brethren think that education should equip them with the proper instruments of exploitation so that they can forever trample over the masses. Stop there. That is your professional managerial class right there that Dr. Martin Luther King is talking about while he was in college. He peeped out that these people don't care about the education, that all they want is the equipment, the tools, the privilege, the status, the class that will allow them to exploit you and trample over you forever. And this is what they have been doing to us, these professional managerial niggas, these educated Negroes. They have been doing exactly that. King seen it. He seen it. And so he was dangerous because he seen it and he was willing to call him on it. So this is one of the reasons why I believe they took him into the fold. It was the best way to control him. A man like him wasn't going to be great control opposition from the outside. Men like him do better in the fold. I think that's why they took him in the fold. Because he understood what he was looking at. He was looking at a whole bunch of blacks, the brethren. He was looking at a whole bunch of black men in particular. And the way they talked, the attitudes they had. They go through college, man. I mean, they just know they are better than you. They look down on you. You are nothing to them. And when they hit that wall of the mainstream society and have nowhere else to go, they come back to the hood and exploit you, because that is what the education was intended to do from jump. And now these people are loyal to that system because that system is what gave them that education, that power over you, that knowledge, which is not really knowledge. It's just a status. It's a class thing. They're not really smarter than you. It's just a class thing. But that system gave them that cachet for that. So now they are in a prime, perfect position to exploit you. And they do it all the way to the bank by deceiving you, while lying to you. All the way to the bank. Louis Henry Gates Jr. did this old stuff about this DNA testing in blacks here and blacks there in South America and Latin America and all that stuff. Then secretly, he joked. Was it behind screen or was it just a joke on screen? But the audio is up. The video is actually up. He joked and said, man, this is crazy. Ain't no way you could spit on something and them people tell you where you're from. He said, this is crazy. He knew that DNA test stuff was fiction. He knew it was a lie, but he still pushed it and propagated it nonetheless. He still used that to tell you that you're not from here, when you are in fact here. And Gates is old enough to know that. This man is 72 years old. He's a little younger than my mom's. Which means he's old enough to have known his grandmother and possibly great-grandmothers. Which means he's old enough to know for certain that his people were never slaves. He know that. He knows it. But he's not going to tell you the truth, because that's what these people do. Minister Farrakhan's the same way. He's old enough to know this. He is old enough to know this. When you that old, you touch some generations. I made that point about Opal Lee, the old lady that's in her 90s, that made it her life mission to get Juneteenth a national holiday. Something that got nothing to do with blacks nowhere else but Texas to begin with. Now she done made it a national holiday. So now all of us think that we supposed to celebrate something that has nothing to do with none of us. Not to mention that lady is old enough to know for certain, 100% certainty, that her people were never slaves. She knows it. She knows it. but she's educated within the system. You see, one of the things y'all got to understand is that there's nothing to talk about when there's nothing to talk about. People like her people, okay, prime example, right? Y'all remember the story out of Virginia, right? Where these black people purchased a home that they claim once was the home where their ancestors were slaves at. And it's not even a plantation home, people. You need to look it up. It's just they just lie, bro. And if you look up the article, a lot of times what you see on the article is a plantation style home for the image, but that is not the home. You pull up the actual home, it's just a house on some land. That's all it is. But anyway, they try to tell them that this is the house where your people was once slaves working at. And they asked the people in the interview, the black media people asked them, the whole family, some of the family were older people, did anybody ever mention slavery in your family? It's like, no. Now, the crazy thing is that the black people interviewing them, they're older too. Bitch, has anybody in your family ever mentioned slavery? No. So then the automatic default setting is, well, they never mention it because it's embarrassing. But if we are all celebrating slavery, if we are all celebrating that as our heritage, as part of our culture, how is it embarrassing? If most of us believe it actually happened and that we actually come from that, how is it embarrassing? No, your people never mention it because it never happened. There is nothing to talk about when there's nothing to talk about. But when you start putting these people through the educational grinder, the indoctrination system, you change the way they think, and then the law of epigenetics kick in. Epigenetics doesn't just deal with actual genetics, right? It's a mindset also, right? So if you start indoctrinating people with stuff, they're going to start passing that down. And before you know it, their children are going to believe nothing but that. And that's what they did to us. This is what they did to us. But they used old black Negroes that were well old enough to know damn well their people wasn't slaves. My mama told me we was already here. My mom ain't as old as Minister Farrakhan. She's not as old as Opal Lee. But she already knew that we was already here in the Americas when the people came. She knew that we wasn't dragged away from Africa. This is the problem with the educated Negro class, right? So they are using these statuses that they're given by the white folks and this presumed authority that they're given by the white folks. They're using that to exploit us. Remember that clip I played at FD Signifier said that the only way blacks are going to make money, real money, is by finding access to white capital or exploiting black people. And all of these people exploit us to their financial benefit. They're selling out for money. Basically, that's what they're doing. Let me continue. So let me back up a little bit. Most of the brethren think that education should equip them with the proper instruments of exploitation so that they can forever trample over the masses. Still, others think that education should furnish them with noble ends rather than means to an end. Now, we're going to stop there too. Noble ends rather than means to an end. What do you mean by that is class and status. That most of these Negroes think that the education is for class and status rather than the ability to perform a certain task, right? Or the ability to enter a certain field of work. Nah, they just looking for class and status. And I peeped this out almost more than 20 years ago. I peeped this out really circa, I'm going to say around 1999, 2000. I noticed that. It was clear as day to me. That's like 23, 24 years ago. It was clear as day to me that what they wanted was class and status. They didn't care about the degree so that they could enter a field of work or a career. They wanted that degree simply for class and status. That's it. To be better than you or to be seen as a better type of Negro in the eyes of white folks. That's what they wanted. That's all they've ever wanted. Let me continue. King goes on to say, a great majority of so-called educated people do not think logically and scientifically. How many times have I said that the education actually makes them dumber? I get pushback for this stuff all the time because I know a lot of y'all invest heavily in college, and I'm not against education, my brothers, my sisters. I'm not against education. I'm just telling you, you got to understand the limits of that educational system. You have to take history. Y'all don't realize that 99.99999% of any history that goes back more than 80, 90 years is probably fake. It's either straight out lies or it's misrepresented, is wrong. I mean, it's off. You cannot sit here and repeat history. They had a guy that actually came in my comment section one time, right? And he was talking about Congo Square down in New Orleans. Let me put my frame up. This is interesting. He was talking about Congo Square down in New Orleans. He asked me, well, if you from New Orleans, do you know the history of Congo Square? And see, that H word kind of triggered me. And I was like, look, bro, I'm not about to sit here and debate history with you. We're going to stop right there. If your argument is debating history, because I was telling him that New Orleans got an Indian culture, that we didn't pick this culture up from nobody, people. Stop being so dumb, man. And this culture, this so-called Indian culture, all the feathers and shit, black people do that all over the world. There's only one non-black people that do that, and they right here over in the Americas with us. Well, two. The Filipinos do something like that. And the so-called Indians, and to some small degree, you know, some of the so-called Amerindian people. But the only people that mimic that is over here. We do this all over the world. How in the hell do you believe that we got that from people that's less than 1% of the damn population? When we were over here, you know, 50, 100 million strong, at least, and we supposed to got that from people that had numbers of 2 million people over here? 1 million people? Stop it. They didn't give us nothing. And how do you explain us doing it all through Africa, all in Madagascar? We do it all over the world, man. Remote islands where blacks are, we do it. This is a cultural thing. From the time when we was all one people, it just spread. As the continents shift, the culture shift with it. That's what you're seeing. This is our way. We did not get that from anybody. But anyway, he was talking about Congo Square. In case you don't know, Congo Square is this area up there in Louis Armstrong Park, right there in the Treme area, right? And it's a little section of it now, right, where they say that the slaves would go out there and trade goods and items. It was a marketplace where the slaves would go out there and trade and buy things when they didn't have to work. Y'all got to make your mind about these definitions of slaves, man. I mean, because every time you talk to somebody, it's a different definition. I had one chick tell me that she know for a fact that her great uncles and whatever were slaves, but all of them had educations and had small businesses too. I'm like, so what, they were part-time slaves? They were slaves part-time and went to school, and then after they graduated, we got a small, I mean, but she college graduate. Let me tell you something, bro. Only a college graduate can look you in the eyes and say something like that. And that's the problem with college education. Only a college graduate can look you in the eyes and tell you that their great uncles were slaves, but they also went to college and they had small businesses. All at the same time. So we got this thing in Congo Square where they wants to tell you that, well, some stories. Now, I mean, depends on what you read, because some of it don't say that. More of the official history on Congo Square don't mention nothing about slaves. It's just said that it was an old marketplace for the indigenous people. That's what some of them said, the more proper ones. That the location of Louis Armstrong Park, the entire park, was a place where we gathered. And as they overlaid and built Louis Armstrong Park and everything, I mean, you still named that the black person, you know what I'm saying? You got Louis Armstrong Park, and the Congo Square section became smaller and smaller and smaller till it just became a little corner. But the whole park was where we gathered. The whole park was like our marketplace. And it's still where we gather. It's still where we do things. So I didn't want to debate history with this young man because he don't understand what he's talking about. Because if you talk about history, history is lying. One brother just said, I just seen this clip. He was talking about the racism from historians. He said that historians are notoriously racist, right? And what they do, they love to interject slavery anywhere as a default way to explain the presence of blacks in places where they feel blacks should not be. In other words, outside of Africa. Anywhere where blacks are outside of Africa, they're even Africa now. The crazy thing is now we talking about North Africa. Come on, people. They want you to believe now that there were no blacks in North Africa. I mean, it's getting crazier as I get older. This was not a discussion we would have had, 30, 40 years ago. Now they want you to believe that black people only live beneath the Sahara Desert. This is crazy, people. It's crazy. And it's getting crazier every year past, it gets crazier. And these educated Negroes that Dr. King is talking about in this article are helping them completely wipe us out of our lands, out of our histories, out of our status. Because if you don't start claiming indigenous status, you ain't got nowhere to go, my brothers. You better start waking up. You better start waking up. Anyway, the brother has said that they always interject slavery as a default way to explain the presence of blacks anywhere where blacks shouldn't be. Like when you start learning about all these black rulers of Europe, these black kings and noblemen of Europe, they're going to tell you that they were once slaves that bought their way out of slavery and became rulers. Oh, come on, man. Here in Americas, right? And the sad thing, this same brother who said that he believes in the transatlantic slave trade. There is no bigger lie about the presence of blacks than here in the Americas and West Indies, bro. There's no bigger lie. The transatlantic slave trade is the way that the racist historians explain our presence. But we did not come here as slaves. They are lying. And it's a shame that brother would say that, and he turned back around because he had an accent. I don't know if he's from the islands or he's from Africa, but he has an accent, so I don't know if he just believe it. I mean, it's sad though. But no, they just lie. They always, and as he said, and what he said, I might play it for y'all. He said also that they interject slavery as the way to explain it without no evidence or nothing to support it. They just say it. And it's automatic. But that's how all this stuff is with these people. It's automatic. They just say what they say and we got to go with it. But it's time for us to start pushing back. So what King said here about the majority of so-called educated black people do not think logically or scientifically, he is correct. Because a lot of stuff don't make sense. Like the educated chick that looked in my eyes and told me that her great uncles were slaves and all this stuff. Like you brothers and sisters that talk about how, oh man, this person was a slave and they bought their way out of slavery. But how they had a job? This dude talking about Congo Square. So now the slaves went to the marketplace on their off time. I seen an article also about Boston area, right? The article, the newspaper article, they were saying how that they need the plantation owners need to keep their slaves in check because they out there fighting in the bars when they're not at work. They going out in the town partying, drinking, and getting in fights. If they slaves, how are they free to go party and get in fights at a bar? People, you're talking about indentured servitude. You're talking about contractual labor. That's all this was. Contracted labor. That's what it was. With steep, unfair stipulations, just like our current system still is. We still work. We still got to work jobs that we don't want. We got to commute. It's hell. Nothing has changed. The only thing has changed is that they no longer call us slaves, but nothing has changed. So let me get back to this here, man. I'm almost done, people. I'm almost done. Give me a second. I'm almost done. So he said, so let's come here right here. We're gonna come to this part here, this next highlighted part. Education must enable one to sift and weigh evidence, to discern the truth from the false, the real from the unreal, and the facts from the fiction. But education does exactly the opposite. It forces you to believe things that your common sense tell you not to believe. It forces you to reach conclusions that everything in your body tell you don't make sense to reach. You connect dots that don't make sense to connect. Like telling me that your great uncles were slaves, but they also went to college and had small businesses. Or telling me that the slaves, when they wasn't at work, were out there at the marketplace playing banjos and singing and dancing, or at the marketplace selling their goods. These things don't make sense. These connections don't make sense. Nothing they've ever told you about slavery makes sense. And the stories keep changing as time go on because the stories are not true. It burns me up every time I see a nigga doing a video. Let me put my my frame back on. Every time I see a nigga doing a video, he talking about in slavery times, we would do this or they would do it. Stop it, bro. How the fuck would you know what was going on 400 years ago, nigga, when you don't even know what was going on 2 weeks ago? Most of these motherfuckers can't tell you what happened in their own life 6 years ago. But they gonna tell you about details about something that happened 400 years ago that they never witnessed. Man, y'all are crazy. But these are all educated niggas that do that. They either autodidacts, they read all this slave stuff, all these black books, or they went through college in Africano studies or liberal arts. They get brainwashed in these things. And it has the opposite effect. Instead of them being more intelligent, let me put this back up, what Dr. King said. Instead of them being able to sift and weigh evidence and to discern the truth from the false, the real from the unreal, and the facts from the fiction, they do just the opposite. Just the opposite. We must remember that intelligence is not enough. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. If we are not careful, our colleges will produce a group of closed-minded, unscientific, illogical propagandists consumed with immoral acts. Be careful, brethren. Be careful, teachers. I don't even know what else to say behind that. If we are not careful, our colleges will produce a group of closed-minded, unscientific, illogical propagandists. Oh, Dr. King just pulled the Nostradamus off on this one, huh, bruh? Did he not, bruh? Consumed with immoral acts. And then he warns us, be careful, brethren. Be careful, teachers. Be careful, my brothers. Be careful, my sisters. I'm not against education. I just see how it's actually used. These people are not our friends. Be careful. On that note, I'm out of here. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Till next time, I'm out of here. I'm Brother Kush, a.k.a. the Black Alpha. Salam.